Good morning. Again, Chanel Hampton. And I wanted to just share a little bit more context. Thank you for sharing that context as well. So from Detroit, and really excited to be here to talk about my journey in talent over about the past 15 years. Ben was asking me what I was going to be talking about, and I said the past 15 years of my experience. So I actually began my career as a teacher. I'm going to begin there, and then we're going to go all the way to the present in 5 minutes. So, 6%. So, fun fact or maybe not so fun fact. So, I'm from Detroit. For undergrad, I went to the University of Michigan and wanted to come back home. I couldn't find a job here. So, I actually moved to St. Louis, Missouri, and I was a middle school English and social studies teacher. During my first year, 99% of my students in St. Louis Public Schools District identified as Black. 6% of our teachers identified as Black that were coming into our public school district. As someone who does identify as Black, but regardless of that, found it quite problematic. I deeply believe that a child should see someone that looks like him or her at some point throughout their day. And if she or he does not, we are telling them, whether we intend to or not, that they can only be successful if they look like who is sitting in front of them. So here are some of my kiddos. Selena in the middle yelling, how excited. So room 106, I was Miss Harris, room 106, and these are some pictures of my kiddos. I deeply, deeply believed that they needed to have teachers who were not only passionate and qualified, but also could socioculturally relate to them. And so forgive the quality of these pictures. These are over a decade old, and the camera wasn't too good then. So I just wanted to share some of that context. So I remember I was teaching, and after my first year, one of my mentors told me, you're just sitting back. You're not pushing yourself. And just as a little bit of context, I don't accredit this to myself, but my students actually scored, and a standardized test is not everything, but they did score the highest in our district aside from our gifted school. And so for her to say that, I was like, what else do you want me to do? And so she knew that I had a problem with the lack of diversity in terms of our teacher talent pool. It was something that I was constantly talking about. If I wasn't at school tutoring, leading the step team, mentoring my girls, dropping kids off, I was literally talking about this. After my first year and beginning to get teaching under my belt a little bit for the years that I taught, I actually got together a group of superintendents from our region, central office staff, some of my teacher colleagues, and we started this initiative. This initiative was called Stay St. Louis, Strength Through Awareness and Inclusion. And we were committed to teacher recruitment and teacher support. I noticed that other people saw a problem with this, but no one necessarily knew where to start. And when I was talking to my principal, or I was at our central office and talking to Dr. Adams, our superintendent, everyone knew that we had an issue, but they weren't really sure where to start. They were doing things to try to change that reality, but nothing was necessarily shifting in a dramatic way. So again, we were in St. Louis and we focused on teacher recruitment and teacher support. We started with pretty much no budget. Who knows Build-A-Bear from the mall? Like this. Okay, Maxine Clark is the founder and recently retired CEO. She was my first supporter. She literally let me use the Build-A-Bear World Headquarters, which is in St. Louis, Missouri. And you walk in, there's a picture of her and Oprah, and it's amazing. And we started hosting these events. We hosted trainings at the Build-A-Bear headquarters. We had Maxine pay for dinner, and we started recruiting people. We literally just started going into the community and talking to anyone and everyone who would talk to us and said, we want you to teach. It was very grassroots, and we started building up this infrastructure. So in our first year, as a result of dinners that we were doing, we asked our superintendent to come, we asked community leaders to come, any grassroots call to actions that we could get. We also started doing these affinity groups and potluck dinners for teachers of color. In our first year, we increased from 6% incoming teachers of color to 26% teachers of color. After 2 years, we went up to 51% teachers of color. And since then, St. Louis is like a second home to me. Their teaching corps has never decreased from less than 50%. So there were a number of things that were happening, and ultimately I ended up getting my 2 master's degrees in administration and became an administrator. And so I'll fast track because I'm getting my time cues here. So what we did, we started noticing more superintendents in the area were asking us, how are you doing this? And it was literally me as a teacher and some of my teacher friends saying, you don't have to pay us in our quote unquote free time, just give us some recruitment materials. If you have to buy a flight to fly us wherever, we'll do it, we will recruit, and we will specifically recruit teachers who our kids need. So as I became an administrator and went on to national work, we expanded in 1 year to 6 states, the next to 13, the next to 26. Ultimately, we actually had an entire team of over 50 employees, and this was woven into the fabric of every region we were working with. So I was coaching our executive directors on how do you actually recruit teachers who do your kids need, right? How do you find folks who are from Detroit or from St. Louis and get them to come back home? And this quickly, I'm just scroll past here because Jack talked about some of that. So I'm gonna take one more minute, I'm sorry. But 71, I'm gonna give you one last number. In Detroit, in 5 years, the most teachers that we have had come from out of state is 71 teachers. In K-12 alone, we have 6,000 teachers. 71, that's it. We could represent almost half of the new teachers coming into the city in 5 years, which is crazy. And every year, we see mobility and fluidity between districts, suburbs, different districts within Detroit, etc. I apologize. So I'm going to go forward, and Jack talked about this. We deeply believe it is our duty to make Detroit the best city in America for teachers. This is my home. My kids are in Detroit public schools. I have relatives throughout schools in Detroit, and we want to make sure that what I started in St. Louis and what my colleagues started in St. Louis is something that we can begin here. And hence we birthed Teach Through and Free. Teach Through and Free, just very quickly, and I'll wrap up because I know I'm at time, is a teacher recruitment and retention initiative. We're really excited that we've been having 150 teacher candidates visiting our site every day, and then as a result, going on to apply in early childhood and K-12 schools and districts throughout our city. If we've done that in 2 months since our launch, what can we do in 1 year? What will that 6% to 26% in St. Louis look like here in Detroit in 1 year? We have 10 educator ambassadors who are throughout early childhood and K-12. They are our teachers. They are the face of our campaign. And so we're really excited. We're 2 months in. I can answer additional questions because I know I'm at time later. But what I will say is if you want to visit our website, teachthroughand3.com, also raise your hand if you know a teacher. Okay, there is a Teach Through and 3 discount. Raise your hand if you know your teacher friends spend money. Raise your hand if you know your teacher friends spend money. Okay. Tell them to download the app. It's Teach Through and 3. They can literally save hundreds or thousands of dollars today on everything from classroom supplies through a mortgage or refi on a house. This app is also built by our Detroit kids, which is really cool. So I'll leave it there, and I'm really excited to answer questions later about Teach Through and 3. Thank you.